Remember that feeling? The specific buzz in your chest walking through those automatic doors, the warehouse-scale chaos of color and noise, the smell of new plastic and hope, the impossible choice between a wall of video games and an aisle of action figures. For decades, Toys R Us was childhood. It was a concrete destination for wonder, so its disappearance feels personal. It feels like a piece of your own history was declared obsolete. But here's what we all got wrong. This wasn't a slow, gentle fading away. This was a specific, avoidable murder. And the weapon wasn't just Amazon. It was a signed contract. In the year 2000, at the dawn of e-commerce, Toys R Us faced a terrifying new world. And their brilliant solution? They handed the entire keys to their online future to Amazon. They didn't just fail to compete. They outsourced their survival to the very company that would cannibalize them. This is the forensic breakdown of that fatal partnership, the clause that gave Amazon all the customer data, the lawsuit that exposed the betrayal, the slow-motion suffocation that followed. It's about the catastrophic debt load that made escape impossible. And it's about the final grim shutdown of 800 stores. But this story is a mirror. Because that deal in 2000 wasn't made by idiots. It was made by smart, desperate people choosing a convenient shortcut over the hard work of building their own future. It's a pattern that doesn't just kill toy stores, it kills careers, startups, and personal potential. So the real question this video answers isn't just what killed Toys R Us. It's this: what future are you currently handing to someone else because the deal seems convenient today? To properly measure the staggering fall, you must first survey the dizzying peak. We're going back decades to the origin story, long before a website could be a store. In the mid-20th century, retail was a physical empire. Success was dictated by location, selection, and sheer scale. And one company executed a playbook with such precision that it didn't just enter the toy market, it became the only destination that mattered. This story begins with a fundamental billion-dollar insight. The founder, Charles Lazarus, returned from World War II and saw a new America. Families were moving to the suburbs. The baby boom was exploding. In his small children's furniture store, he noticed a pattern. Parents would buy a crib once, but they came back repeatedly for toys. Toys were the repeat purchase. Toys were the engine of recurring revenue. He acted. In 1957, the first true Toys R Us store opened in Rockville, Maryland. This was not a quaint neighborhood shop, it was a warehouse. His strategy was brutal and elegant. To dominate a category, you must own it completely. You must have every toy, from every manufacturer, at every price point. The store itself was a shock. A vast, fluorescent-lit space where merchandise sat stacked in its original shipping boxes. This wasn't about ambience. It was about the overwhelming awe of infinite choice. This was the birth of the category killer, a model so potent it didn't just compete. It consolidated. Local toy shops and department store sections vanished, unable to match the buying power, selection, or pricing. Toys R Us was becoming the central distributor for the entire industry. But a warehouse alone is cold. The brand needed a heartbeat. Enter Geoffrey the giraffe and the iconic backward R. This was psychological mastery. Geoffrey was a friendly guide in the intimidating vastness. The childlike backward R signaled for kids. The branding didn't create the machine, but it made the machine feel like magic. It built emotional resonance on a foundation of ruthless efficiency. Then, they perfected a tactical engine, the loss leader. They would sell the must-have holiday toy, the year's hottest video game console, at a razor-thin margin, sometimes at a loss. The math was undeniable. A parent wouldn't leave with just the console. They'd grab batteries, extra controllers, 3 games. And while they were there, maybe a new bike, a board game, a doll. The store became a vortex for the entire family's discretionary spending. By the 1980s and 1990s, the dominance was absolute. It was cultural, it was financial. At their zenith, they operated over 1,500 stores globally. In the United States, they commanded an estimated 1/4 of the entire toy market. Let that settle. Roughly 1 in every 4 toys sold passed through their registers. They held multi-year exclusive deals with giants like Hasbro and Mattel. Their Christmas big book catalog was a holiday ritual. And the in-store experience had its own rights, pulling the giant yellow ticket from the wall peg, bringing it to the cage-like stockroom counter, waiting for your prize to emerge from the back. This wasn't shopping, it was a pilgrimage. The confidence within the company's Paramus, New Jersey headquarters was not mere arrogance. It was the logical conclusion from decades of victory. They had advanced inventory systems. They controlled prime suburban real estate, a moat that seemed unbreachable. They held generational brand loyalty. The idea of a fundamental threat seemed illogical, and this supreme confidence created a critical blind spot. It led them to believe their core strengths, inventory, real estate, supplier contracts, were permanent defenses. What they failed to perceive was that the landscape of retail itself was shifting. The true moat was no longer just shelf space, it was about owning the customer relationship and the data that came with it. This was their silent, growing vulnerability. In their model, the transaction ended with a paper receipt. The data was trapped, anonymous, not linkable to a living, breathing customer whose habits could be tracked and predicted. They owned the box, but not the behavior. So, when a new kind of challenge emerged, they assessed it through this flawed lens. They looked at Amazon, which had aggressively expanded into toys after 1999, and saw a tech problem. They saw a complex e-commerce puzzle they could conveniently outsource to a specialist. They saw a distribution partner. They did not see a future overlord. The confidence of the peak made the coming decision feel safe, savvy, and clever. It allowed them to believe they were making a shrewd partnership, when in reality, they were preparing to tutor their own replacement. The kingdom, in their minds, was secure. The year was 1999, a meeting was scheduled, a deal was drafted, and the era, monumental and irreversible, was set in motion, not with a roar, but with a click. The year is 1998. Internet adoption is accelerating. For millions of households, the dial-up tone is the gateway to something new. Early websites are basic, but the foundational idea is taking root. You could buy things without going to a store. In Seattle, a company founded in 1994, Amazon, had mastered this new arena, starting with books. By 1998, they were selling music and DVDs. But their real product wasn't merchandise, it was a new system. A system built for infinite digital shelf space, for capturing customer behavior, and for turning every transaction into a data point. This was a direct challenge to the old retail model. While Toys R Us calculated value in square footage, Amazon was calculating it in server capacity and customer profiles. Inside Toys R Us headquarters, the perspective was fundamentally different. Their empire was physical and immensely profitable. Their advantages were scale, binding contracts with toy manufacturers, a nationwide network of massive stores and warehouses, and dominant market share. From this position, the early web seemed like a niche channel. The notion of shipping large, low-margin toys to individual homes felt economically irrational compared to the high-volume, in-store model. Yet, external pressure was building. Wall Street demanded a digital strategy. Competitors like Walmart launched e-commerce sites. The need for a credible answer became urgent. In 1998, Toys R Us launched toysrus.com. It failed almost immediately. The site was unstable, the order fulfillment infrastructure was inadequate. Then came the defining catastrophe, the 1999 holiday shopping season. The website buckled under traffic. Orders disappeared into the void, arrived weeks late, or were simply cancelled. Newspapers ran stories with headlines like "Toys R Us website overwhelmed" and "Online holiday shoppers left empty-handed." Customer service lines jammed with furious parents. The public relations hit was severe and immediate. Decades of brand trust were damaged in a matter of weeks. Facing this crisis, the leadership confronted a brutal choice. Building a competent, modern e-commerce operation required a monumental investment, hundreds of millions in technology, a team of specialized engineers, and a complete overhaul of their logistics. It meant risking their still strong store sales, potentially angering Wall Street. The board saw it as a dangerous, multi-year gamble. Meanwhile, the fallout from the holiday disaster was real. Refunds were processed, stock prices were nervous, and the boardroom demanded a fast, lower-risk solution. They began searching for a shortcut. Their focus turned to the company that appeared to have solved the puzzle, Amazon. By 1999, Amazon was the clear leader in online retail. They had the technology platform, the growing logistics network, and the customer-facing expertise Toys R Us lacked. To the Toys R Us board, a partnership seemed like strategic genius. It offered a clean division of labor. We provide the toys and inventory, you provide the website and fulfillment. It looked like efficiency. In reality, it was a negotiation defined by one side's urgent need for a lifeline and the other's control of the new platform. The talks that began in early 2000 would center on critical and ultimately devastating terms, exclusivity, control of the digital storefront, and, most importantly, who would own the relationship and the data of the online customer. The contract was drafted. With a signature, Toys R Us wouldn't just be making a deal, it would be signing away its right to a direct future. Early 2000. The pressure on Toys R Us was immediate and severe. They needed to demonstrate a viable digital strategy to Wall Street fast. Amazon, expanding rapidly beyond books, sought dominance in new categories while facing its own pressures to achieve profitability. The negotiation was not between predator and prey, but between two entities seeking a shortcut. For Toys R Us, Amazon offered a turnkey solution to their e-commerce failure. For Amazon, the deal provided instant category authority and a massive inventory supplier. The 10-year partnership announced in August 2000 was framed as a landmark alliance, a co-branded online toy store on Amazon.com. Publicly, it appeared to be a savvy fix. But the contractual reality created a framework for dependence. The agreement contained three critical provisions that would systematically undermine Toys R Us's future. First, the exclusivity provision. In its drive for a comprehensive solution, Toys R Us granted Amazon exclusivity as its online toy and baby products retailer in the United States. Amazon, in turn, agreed to feature the brand and, contractually, to restrict sales from other toy vendors. This secured prominent placement, but came with a devastating strategic cost. For the duration of the deal, Toys R Us was contractually barred from developing a meaningful, independent e-commerce operation. They had legally outsourced their digital future. Meanwhile, the restriction on Amazon proved fragile, vulnerable to the pressures of consumer demand and inventory shortages from Toys R Us itself. Second, the customer and data provision. This was the core relinquishment of sovereignty. The storefront existed on Amazon's domain. Amazon processed all transactions, handled all customer service, and maintained the direct relationship with the buyer. Critically, Amazon retained all customer data, contact information, purchase history, and browsing behavior. Toys R Us received orders to fulfill, but gained no right to market to those customers directly. They had no insight into why products were searched for or abandoned. They were operationally blind to the digital customer's identity and habits, functioning as a wholesale fulfillment arm for a platform that was actively learning to optimize toy sales. They fed the algorithm but learned nothing from it. Third, the financial and operational provision. The deal was a revenue-sharing agreement. Amazon took a significant cut of each sale, reported to be a substantial percentage, further compressing the toy industry's notoriously thin margins. Toys R Us remained responsible for purchasing and warehousing all inventory, bearing the associated financial risk. They also handled the complex, costly logistics of shipping individual items, either to Amazon's network or directly to consumers as directed. This structure guaranteed their online sales would operate as a low-margin or loss-leading cost center, stripping away capital and making internal investment in their own digital future financially prohibitive. For several holiday seasons, the arrangement functioned. But by 2004, the inherent conflicts erupted into litigation. Toys R Us sued Amazon, alleging violation of exclusivity by allowing third-party toy sellers. Amazon countersued, citing Toys R Us's frequent failure to maintain adequate stock, which forced Amazon to source elsewhere to meet customer demand. Both claims held truth. The partnership collapsed under the weight of misaligned incentives. Amazon's drive for limitless selection and reliability versus Toys R Us's need to protect its exclusive foothold. A 2006 settlement dissolved the partnership. While terms were confidential, it was widely reported that Toys R Us paid a significant sum, often cited as $51 million, to exit the agreement. They regained their freedom to build their own online presence. But the true, irrecoverable cost was time and capability. From 2000 to 2006, the formative years of modern e-commerce, Amazon had used the partnership to master toy logistics, demand forecasting, and customer acquisition for the category. Toys R Us emerged with no owned customer data, no direct digital marketing channel, and an atrophied internal capacity for online innovation. They had outsourced their learning curve during the very period when it was most critical to build it. When they finally stepped back into the ring, they were years behind, financially weaker, and competing for a customer relationship they had already seeded. Now, hold that thought. Because in 2005, a second, simultaneous catastrophe began, one that would lock the strategic failure into a financial prison. While the Amazon partnership was decaying, Toys R Us attracted a private equity consortium, Bain Capital, KKR, and Vornado Realty Trust. They proposed a leveraged buyout to take the company private, in a deal valued at approximately $6.6 billion. To shareholders, this appeared as a lucrative exit. To the buyers, it represented a turnaround bet on an iconic brand's cash flow and real estate. But the financial engineering of an LBO would prove incompatible with the brutal realities of a low-margin, seasonal toy business in a digital revolution. The Amazon deal had stolen their roadmap. The leveraged buyout would confiscate their fuel. The mechanism was debt. The consortium financed the acquisition largely by loading around $5.3 billion in new debt directly onto the company's balance sheet. Toys R Us itself became liable for the massive annual payments. Interest expenses reportedly soared to roughly $400 million per year. This created a punishing new priority. Servicing debt became the first and largest claim on every dollar of profit. Money that could have modernized stores, built websites, or hired tech talent was now earmarked for creditors. It was a financial chokehold. The suffocation was tangible. Ambitious store remodel plans, crucial for refreshing the fraying experience, were halted or scaled back to a trickle. Hiring for critical e-commerce and IT roles was frozen, leaving a skeleton crew to tackle the digital gap. The focus shifted to extreme cost control. Store maintenance was deferred, leading to worn carpets and flickering lights. Staffing was optimized to the bone, causing longer checkout lines and less help on the sales floor. Inventory selection was trimmed to reduce carrying costs, making the endless aisle feel progressively less endless. The oxygen, the capital required to adapt and compete, was being siphoned away by interest payments. This debt trap created a vicious, inescapable feedback loop with the earlier Amazon failure. The partnership had left them with no digital muscle or customer data. The LBO now made building that capability from scratch a financial impossibility. They were paralyzed. Any attempt to construct a competitive e-commerce operation represented a nine-figure investment they couldn't finance. Their physical stores, needing investment to remain destinations, were instead becoming costly liabilities. Management's horizon shrunk from years to quarters, focused on liquidity and covenant compliance rather than transformation. The company was being managed for survival, not for revival. By the late 2000s, the position was dire. The 2008 financial crisis battered all retailers, but for Toys R Us, it merely accelerated an existing tailspin. They faced the rise of omni-channel retail with a crushing debt load and no digital foundation. The leverage didn't just limit options, it rendered any bold strategic move, a major tech acquisition, a nationwide store format overhaul, a fantasy. The Amazon deal had seeded their future. The leveraged buyout ensured they could never reclaim it. What followed were the fragmented, underfunded, and ultimately futile attempts at adaptation, a belated website relaunch playing catch-up, a confused push into smaller store formats, and a last-ditch effort to leverage the Babies R Us brand. These were not solutions. They were symptoms of a patient in terminal decline, trying remedies they could no longer afford. By 2010, the retail landscape had fundamentally reset. The iPad arrived. Smartphones redefined convenience. Amazon Prime established fast, free delivery as a new baseline. The winning model was now omnichannel, a seamless blend of digital and physical. Toys R Us entered this new era years behind, shackled by debt, and possessing a digital capability that was elementary at best. What followed was a period of frantic, undercapitalized, and disjointed attempts to catch up. This was a company trying to rebuild its engine mid-flight with a half-empty toolbox, where every initiative was hobbled by the same brutal constraint, a balance sheet that forbade bold bets. The most critical effort was the digital rebuild. Regaining control after 2006, their progress was paralyzed by a lack of capital and expertise. A relaunched e-commerce platform arrived years behind rivals, lacking the sophisticated personalization and logistical precision that Amazon and Walmart had perfected. The site was functional but unremarkable, plagued by high shipping costs that deterred small orders and inventory glitches that led to order cancellations. Its foundational flaw was a data desert. While competitors leveraged rich purchase histories, Toys R Us was building digital relationships from scratch, with no repository of online customer behavior. They were competing in a data-driven arms race with a pea shooter. Simultaneously, they chased physical store experiments. Confronted with the crushing cost of their massive, aging big-box stores, they tested smaller express formats, and later, store-within-a-store concepts with retail partners. The logic was sound: reduced footprint. The execution revealed the desperation. The express stores carried a limited selection, gutting the very endless aisle promise that defined them. These experiments consumed capital while the core estate decayed. Aisles felt emptier, lighting grew dim, and maintenance was deferred. They were pruning branches while the tree's roots were rotting. The third, telling pivot, was a strategic retreat to Babies R Us. As the low-margin toy war became unwinnable, management leaned into their stronger baby products division, aiming to dominate the baby registry. Yet this too was a move from weakness. The baby category was under siege from online specialists offering superior registry user experiences and price transparency. Fully leveraging this strategy required serious investment in technology and marketing investment that never materialized. It became less a bold new front and more a desperate consolidation into the last defensible trench. Throughout this period, the debt enforced a scattershot approach. There was no war chest for a unified transformation. Parallel, underfunded initiatives, a basic website, experimental stores, a baby focus competed for scraps. This dilution corroded the brand. What did Toys R Us stand for? The warehouse of wonder? The convenient small shop? The baby expert? The confused answer meant they stood for nothing distinct in the consumer's mind. The ultimate tragedy was their inability to weaponize their sole potential advantage, their physical stores. As the 2010s progressed, the industry's great defense against Amazon became click and collect, buy online, pick up in-store. This required heavy investment in integrated inventory systems and store-level tech. Toys R Us couldn't fund it. While Target and Walmart rolled out robust programs, turning stores into distribution hubs, Toys R Us locations remained passive endpoints. The very assets that could have been their salvation were frozen in time by a balance sheet that prohibited evolution. By 2016, the outcome was clear: relentless erosion. Market share faded. Losses accumulated. Vendors, sensing instability, began tightening credit terms. The debt, though refinanced, was an unmovable anchor. The adaptation attempts weren't ill-conceived, but they were executed too late, with insufficient capital and without cohesive vision. They were applying strategic band-aids to a patient bleeding out internally. The financial markets lost the last of their patience. Facing a crippling debt payment and with the 2017 holiday season looming, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in September 2017. The long struggle to adapt was over. The liquidation had begun. September 18, 2017. Toys R Us files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The headlines announce a financial restructuring, a chance to shed debt and emerge leaner. The company heads into the critical holiday season with around $3 billion in reported debt and promises to vendors. But Chapter 11 is not a shield. It's a transparent room where every weakness is exposed. The filing triggers a cascade of doubt. Vendors, fearing they won't be paid, begin demanding cash up front or holding back shipments. Top holiday toys and key products become scarce. Shelves that needed to be full for the holiday rush grow conspicuously bare. Meanwhile, the company burns through its limited bankruptcy financing just to keep the lights on. The 2017 holiday season becomes a public demonstration of failure. Shoppers encounter understocked stores and a palpable sense of an ending. Sales collapse. The reorganization plan unravels. By March 2018, the conclusion is liquidation. The company announces it will close or sell all of its roughly 735 remaining US stores. Approximately 3,000 jobs are set to disappear. This is not a restructuring, it is a dissolution. What follows is a prolonged, public unwinding, the going out of business sale. The iconic Geoffrey the Giraffe stands amid stripped shelves and liquidation banners, transforming from a symbol of joy into one of surreal corporate mortality. Employees face the grim task of dismantling their own workplace, often with uncertain futures. For communities, the closure leaves a physical void, a massive, empty retail box where a generations-old destination once stood. The loss is tangible. This wasn't just a store closing, it was the erasure of a shared space for childhood memory. By mid-2018, the lights go out. The physical empire built by Charles Lazarus ceases to exist, yet, in a final irony, the brand name persists as a spectral presence. The intellectual property is sold and licensed, reappearing on websites, in department store pop-ups, and on new, smaller stores. This afterlife is often mistaken for a resurrection. It is not. It is a trademark stripped of its operational soul, its scale, and its cultural gravity. The empire is gone. The logo remains. The collapse of Toys R Us provides a stark case study in modern failure. The sequence of decisions reveals clear, transferable warnings. The first warning is about control. The 2000 Amazon deal was the decisive surrender. By letting the store live on Amazon.com, they traded ownership of the customer relationship, the data, the marketing access, the storefront itself for short-term convenience. They ceased to control their digital destiny. The second warning is about the dead weight of debt. The 2005 leveraged buyout didn't just add payments, it removed strategic oxygen. That roughly $400 million annual interest toll meant every dollar was claimed before any real investment could happen. Management's focus shifted from building the future to servicing the past. Crippling debt systematically cancels your ability to adapt. The third warning is about the blindness of success. At its peak, the category killer model was so dominant it made the next paradigm, digital, data-driven, platform-based, seem irrelevant until it was too late. Your greatest strength can create your most dangerous blind spot. The final warning is about fragmented adaptation. Their late efforts, the belated website, the experimental small stores, the retreat to Babies R Us, failed because they were underfunded, reactive, and disconnected. When facing existential change, scattered half measures cannot overcome a systemic threat. This story charts the convergence of technological shift, financial pressure, and strategic paralysis. But beyond the mechanics, it is about loss. The loss of place, of tradition, of thousands of livelihoods, and of a specific, noisy, colorful temple to childhood wonder. We replaced it with a click, a box, an algorithm. Perhaps that is more efficient. This story compels us to ask, what else vanishes when we optimize solely for convenience and margin? The question this collapse leaves us with is personal. In your professional life, your investments, or your choices, what is the one shortcut you're taking today that might cost you your future control? The value of this story isn't in mourning a fallen giant. It's in using its collapse as a mirror to see the traps, to build for relevance, and to remember that the most iconic empires can fall not with a roar, but through a series of quiet, reasonable, and utterly catastrophic clicks.